This is Rocksteady by Aretha Franklin, played by Chuck Rainey on bass. It's an absolutely amazing bass line. I used to play this loads in bands, and actually I didn't realise quite how great this bass line is. I'm going to go into the first of two bass grooves that there are in this whole song. We've basically got something around A-7 and then something around D7. Chuck Rainey just changes the groove all the time, but I've transcribed roughly the first few things he does. Let's go into it. That's the first bar. I'm going to take it slow and just show you what he's doing. There are lots of little different devices and hammer-ons and ghost notes and cool things. So I'm starting on the 5th fret of the E string, but you can play the open A if you want. It's all about in between the notes, the length of the notes and the little ghost notes and hammer-ons he's putting in. Really great. So I'm going 5th fret A and then just releasing to get a ghost note, making sure to use more than one finger for the ghost note so that it's nice and dead. By the way, the tone is a classic P bass, flat wound strings, foam mute. I've got a bit of a sponge mute going on here. So the note is not as sustained as normal. It's that classic old school R&B soul sound. So we got a little hammer on between the G and the A, 3rd fret to 5th fret E string, back to the G, and this little figure here. So A, G, A, C. Play it open string or 5th fret. There's an isolated version of Bernard Purdie on drums, who's just a legend. All the players on this are just stellar. Bernard Purdie and Chuck Rainey, I'll put a link to it below. It's a must listen. I was playing this bass line not really brilliantly all the times I've played it. I should have listened to that original over and over. There's so much in between he does. And those notes at the end, they're quite short. Even though they're all notated as 8th notes, all of the lengths and the attacks are slightly different. So it's this. And then the second bar, I added my own ghost note in there, and you can do the same. That really is the basis of the groove. I've watched a few other live versions of this, and players choose to stick to one groove rather than do the Chuck Rainey change it all the time thing. So that's just this. We've got a lot of syncopation going here where the rhythms aren't exactly on the beat. So it's da, 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 like that note there, the 3rd note in that bar. So after 4 it's this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3rd bar. I just transcribed a couple of things he did, and then you can just take the main groove, which is really this, really. A, G, and C. So A 5th fret, G 3rd fret, C 3rd fret, A string, and that's how I would play it live. You can add in different things using those same notes. So here's the 3rd bar. That was a nice line I heard. A to E. With that rhythm. Da, 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 da. All of that James Jamerson Motown stuff going into R&B, all of that music uses 16th note rhythms. It's such a great genre to study for bass players. This is quite funky as well. It's got a funk chord progression. We'll get into that later, the theory behind this and what fills you can add in and so on. But these rhythms are just absolutely brilliant for bass players. So that bit at the end, A, E, G, G sharp, leads you very nicely back in. That's another common trick, very James Jamerson thing to do, is to use chromatic notes to lead back in. He does that all the time. So open A, I think, and then just frets 10, 11, 12, F, F sharp, G. If you use the open string, you have plenty of time to get there and back. But you could also go. Either way, it's quite a hand shift to do, to go from the 5th fret all the way to the 10th. But But that basic groove, that basic rhythm of this, that's the thing that sticks to it. If you listen to the intro, you'll hear Chuck doing some cool little G slides, like going from about the 12th fret on the G string upwards. And I read that they put some echo on that. It's quite an interesting effect. So it's kind of 4 bars of that, 4 times around the full groove. It's 1 bar, 2, 3, 4. There's 105 beats per minute. And then you're in, the verse and choruses are all the same. And I think I counted 3 lots around 8 bars before you get to this sort of bridge section, which is the D7. Very obvious on the live version because Bernard Purdie does this very obvious fill, and any drummer live would do the same thing. So I want to go into that section now. There's actually someone asked me to break this one down, and they said that that section, they didn't really know what to play over that. So I've transcribed a little bit of Chuck Rainey's line, and I'm going to break that down for you, but I also just want to show you what you can do yourself if you to make stuff up. So let's go into it. Very syncopated, very slowly. We've got D octaves, back down to the low D, so it's 3, 4. That's quite syncopated. Right after beat 2, you've got that rhythm. And then ghost notes. F sharp, G, A. Now, Chuck Rainey, when he was making this up, same as James Jameson, they're just seeing a D7 chord for the music and just making things up around it. It is a useful exercise to transcribe and break down what a bass player does, just to see what things work over a certain chord. I do that all the time. I recommend you do too. But once you know this is the chord, these are the notes I can play around it, you can make your own thing up. I'll go through this and I'll show you what I mean. Next bar. It's a really great rhythm, that. I think it's a D to an E. Might be a D. Might be an F. Just this chromatic movement to the F sharp. I'll play the next 2 bars. Really syncopated, especially that last one, which goes 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you listen to the isolated version and the way that he plays those notes, it's just so funky. It's all those swing rhythms he puts in himself. Let me break that down for you. I'll go into the sort of theory side of the lesson now. Let me start with the A minor 7 bit, actually. So this is where our classic funk thing comes in. We've got a chord progression here, just an A minor 7 going to a D7. But if you listen to the guitar figures, they're sort of... The bass is playing a C, but sometimes the guitar plays a C sharp. That's that classic ambiguous blues thing of having a major and minor thing kind of going on at the same time. And this is rooted in blues, but it's very much funk as well. So the bass line is just really based around a Dorian mode. All those notes fit, although Chuck Rainey didn't do any of that other stuff. Just really was playing an A, G, and a C. Let's say you're playing this live though and you would quite like to put in some fills. Well, that's what you could do. So this is the Dorian mode. It's the second mode of a major scale. So A Dorian is the second mode of G major. And it has the notes A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, like this. If you isolate the first, third, fifth and 7th notes, you get a minor 7th arpeggio, A minor 7. And all of those notes in this piece of music, the bass line anyway, are just those notes, just a root. The G is that minor 7th or flat 7. Doesn't matter where you play it, still a minor 7. And that flat third is the C, right? And that's just the bass line, just those really simple intervals. Some chromatic stuff going on there, just notes from outside of the scale or key. But that major sixth really gives it that sound of the Dorian. So I would recommend that if you play this live, not to overplay and not to play too far away from Chuck Rainey's amazing bass line. It's already great. But if you did want to do something, you could do that. Of course, A minor pentatonic, A minor blues fits over the Dorian really well. F sharp, that's that real Dorian note. Let's go to the D7 section. Now, I went to a Chuck Rainey bass clinic at the Bass Centre years and years ago, and I'll never forget what he said. He was talking about these kinds of bass lines, soul, R&B kind of bass lines, and he said there's like 4 or 5 patterns you need to learn, and that's it. And sure enough, he's acting that out in this bass line. One of them is this. You've got the D. This is a D7 chord that we're on now, so we can play a D7 arpeggio. That's a D7 arpeggio, you need to know that one. Plus down here as well. The same notes, just down the octave. So that's like a skeleton shape of that. And then you can go between notes of that arpeggio chromatically. And that's what Chuck Rainey was talking about. This is a classic one. When you go between the major third, the F sharp, and the fifth, the A, you'll hear Tommy Cogbill, you'll hear Jaco Pastorius, you'll hear Rocco Prestia from Tower of Power with these lines, and a load of other people as well. That's chromaticism. There's that flat 7, which is the C, leading up to the octave. I mean, hours and hours of fun doing this. That was just, again, that D7 arpeggio, knowing it not just one octave, but the next octave as well. And just playing around chromatically between some of those chord tones. And then just applying a bunch of syncopated 16th note rhythms to them. I must do another lesson on that, although I do have a theory course that goes into it loads, and I do have an R&B Soul Motown course that goes into it loads as well. If you're interested in that, I'll put a link below. But what you could do is just be tapping your foot, first without a metronome or drum loop. So I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm subdividing the beats into 16th notes. So those are 16ths. 1E and a 2E and a b. And you've got different rhythms like 2 16ths and an eighth. Okay. Or an eighth and 2 16ths. Flip that rhythm round. That already sounds cool. Then you've got this one, 16th, 8th, 16th, right? That's just on a root, sounds quite good. Add in some ghost notes, move to some of the other notes that I was showing you just now, you know, the arpeggio and the chromatic notes. I'll play that with a drum beat because that's the next thing. Get the notes together, get some rhythms together, and then play it to a beat. I'll put a link to the backing track below as well so you can do that kind of thing. It really starts to make sense when you have some of the rhythms in your head and under your fingers. You've got the notes that you can play that sound good, you know. I went up the octave here. And just did chromatic stuff. Third and fifth again. You can go the other way. This is very Joe Dart-esque. He does this stuff all the time. Stuff like that as well. Flat third to major third. There's my D. There's my major third. Really comfortable with where these intervals are. I always know if I'm on a D. You can do that. So I do think that you should transcribe Chuck Rainey's original, but if you're playing live, I think it's probably a bit more helpful to actually understand, you know, the form of the song. There's 16 bars around this. Then we go to the B section, and then just be able to know, okay, well, the basic groove is this. You might want to put some of that in as well. Feel free to put your own thing in. Why not put your own spin on it? Don't overplay, but be able to have fun like that. Then you're going to the bridge section. You're aware it's D7. So it's A minor 7 to D7, dominant 7. It's a very funk chord progression, 2-5. Like an A Dorian to D Mixolydian, which is this. You can play those notes as well, although Chuck Rainey doesn't do anything like that. He's playing mainly the chord tones, arpeggio notes with those chromatic kind of movements. It's good to transcribe it to see what he's doing, so you reverse engineer it. So I really like that bit where he goes. There he goes. And you can't ever notate it exactly how he played it. That's why you've always got to use your ears and listen and rewind, listen, rewind. Like that really adds some ghost notes and extremely short notes in. So I might play that, write it down, commit it to memory, and on a gig, that kind of rhythm will come out, and that's the whole point. That's why I do these bass line breakdowns, to give you an amazing bass line. And really, honestly, I think this is one of the greatest bass lines and performances of all time, partly because the band is so good that they're all just on top of their game. You work it out, then you try and work out how you can play it your own way, and also make some other music up that borrows these ideas. That's what we're doing here, is we're taking the best bass players of all time and learning from them. That's what I hope we're going to do. Okay, so if you're interested in that kind of thing, do subscribe to the channel, because I've got loads more like this. In fact, I'll leave a playlist right here with some other breakdowns of great tunes. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.